And welcome to Front Row the Podcast. We're very excited to have you here. But before we get going, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review if you got value from this week's episode. We can't wait to share with you all the industry peers, all the industry experts, all around professional speaking. And we are super excited to welcome you to this week's episodes. Get your notepad ready, get your action steps lined up, and let's tune in to this week's episode. And welcome back to Front Row. Today I am joined by the incredible Ben Hanlin, who was Speaker of the Year 2024, who's had a slightly different journey into speaking, which we'll unpack. But you are listening to the Winner Series. We are back with another fantastic episode. I can't wait to dive into Ben's journey. He's got quite a unique journey, which I'm sure we'll unpack as we go along. Interestingly, I think you're one of the only newcomers to then win Speaker of the Year. We'll come into that as well. But Ben, welcome to Front Row the Podcast. How has your year been? Because as we're recording this, it's December 2025. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to before we deep dive into things.
Yeah, it's
a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's been a good year. So where are we now? We were recording this on a few days before Christmas. I just did my last gig of the year in Kent a couple of days ago, and it's been a nice year. It's been a good mix of keynotes, which has been growing year on year, which has been lovely, which I'm sure we'll dive into. And apart from that, I also do corporate entertainment. So I'll do awards hosting, after dinner entertainment, conference hosting, things like that. So it's been a real good mix of the keynote and then the entertainment, and it's been positive, and I feel like I'm ready for a break, as most people are, and I have this feeling now where we get to the end of the year and we go, oh no, in about 2 weeks the diaries starts again, and we go, but there's a few projects I'm working on that are going to keep me excited for 2026, which is good. So
can't wait to hear that unravel. And I think one of them is probably the new podcast you launched, which we'll talk about a bit later on. So tell us a little bit about, so this is the Winner Series, so I get to interview all the incredible winners. I've interviewed a few already. I've got a few coming up next year. So you came along in 2024 and you kind of did incredibly well. You were newcomer, you won Speaker of the Year as well. But take us back a bit. Take us to that moment when you decided to enter. Were you kind of guided to? Did you hear about it? How did you come across the Speaker Awards? I was obviously being a winning newcomer of the year. I was relatively new to speaking, and I thought I was just quite, being curious about the whole industry in general, and trying to work out, how does this work? How does speakers get more gigs? How do we raise our profile? So very much coming at it from a PR, I'll be honest, PR and social media angle of going, well, I need to kind of put my flag in the sand here that I'm now not just the entertainment guy, but I'm a speaker guy. So winning an award is a great way to establish yourself in a new place, really. So that's what I was interested in. And obviously, when it came to speaking awards, these were what I was seeing a lot of, and it looked like it was all done very well. And kept seeing all the content on LinkedIn and thought, well, that makes sense. Okay.
Why not enter?
And was there an element of you that was like a bit skeptical? You're like, oh, is it just one of these things? Like, because I've interviewed a couple who are,
I mean, I host awards for a living, right? So I go on 40 award ceremonies a year. So I hear all sorts of different variations of why they're being run. So there is a bit of that, of what's the thing behind it, and also why do you want to win an award, right? What is the point? And I think being clear as to why you want to win, for me, it's not about an ego thing. It was very much, I need to build this new thing I'm doing, and an award is going to help me just get a little bit further down the line if that award has merit to it. If it doesn't have any merit to it, then what's the point? So I did a bit of digging around that, and I thought, how seriously would people take me if I win it? And if I'm honest, I think it was still fairly new.
Third year in,
maybe your third. Yeah. So there was some mixed reviews in certain ways of like how much of a life changer it is. And I have this viewpoint. Actually, I heard it. It's a shameless plug in my pocket. I heard it on one of my guests in my pocket. He said, "A swallow doesn't make a summer," which is one thing isn't going to change your career. It's lots of little things. So my view was that I was like, look, I don't know if this is going to propel me forever, but it's not going to hurt, right? It's only going to move me further forward.
Okay, so that's a healthy attitude, and it's true. It's like many people, they'll do the TEDx or they'll do that talk, but then they do nothing with it. You know, I mean, I even know people that have won awards and they've come up to me and go, well, nothing's happened since I've won the award. And I'm like, well, how much promotion have you done around it? How much sharing of, well, not a lot. I'm like, well, there you go. Like, you got to keep momentum going. So I love what you're saying there. Go on.
Yeah. And I think what I did actually, and maybe this is quite, being a newcomer, I can, you know, as a newcomer, I very much try and pattern spot. So I tried to find out who are the most successful people in the UK speaking, and what do they have that I don't. And a lot of them have some sort of awards. A lot of them have spoken at a TEDx or a big conference. So I started making this checklist. And I was like, oh, right. So that's why in the same year, in the February, I'd done a TEDx talk, because I'm like, right, speakers have books, they do TEDx, they do this, they do that. So, right, if I'm going to be a successful speaker, I'm going to start ticking these off the list as quick as I can. So even that, the TEDx, you know, you probably might be listening to this thinking, am I ready for a TEDx talk? You're never ready. So just start applying until someone takes interest, and then figure out the solution after.
Say yes first, right? Stage time, of course. So you started to tick off this. So you've got your TEDx, which is also the other category you entered. Was that right? TEDx, newcomer. Yeah, and won them both, which is quite extraordinary. Yeah, you got the hat trick there. And so take us to the moment before you even take us to the shortlisting. Did you attend? Did you send someone to attend? And when we
didn't attend the shortlisting, sent my entries in, and thought I thought I'd entered for 3. Thinking, well, I don't know how this works. I don't know if I only get 1 or
you ended 2.
Or don't. Oh, yeah, 2. Yeah, so I entered 2. Sorry, entered 2. Thinking, and I didn't send anyone because, again, I'm away from home so much with my job anyway. If it takes a lot to get me out of my house when I'm not working, so I've got a young family. So no, didn't do that. Found out I was entered, and then just sat and wait, and just turned up and treated the night as a chance just to meet. The other thing, and I think I mentioned this in my speech, was the whole event. The night is a nice way to chat to people that are doing the same thing, because our job is very lonely. I spent my Saturday night in a hotel room this Saturday night. I spent my Sunday morning on the road driving back. Like, I can go a long chunk of my week without speaking to anyone. So being in a room where you're with other people, it was quite nice to share those stories and have that.
Yeah, and everyone I've interviewed, interesting, from the Winners series has said it's lonely. It was nice to be in a room full of fellow peers, right? So take us through the night. You're sitting there. I think you were quite, if I remember correctly, you're kind of quite at the back, if I remember your position of your table. And I don't think it was intentional, so I hope we wouldn't offend you in any way by putting you at the back. And you were with your manager, is that right? You have a manager?
Yeah, my manager, Adam, again. So we just treated it as a fun night out and see what happens, right? It's all out of our control, so there's no point.
No, of course not. Well, the other thing, of course, to remind everybody watching and listening, it's a snapshot in time. So, there's people that entered 3-4 times and they kind of never quite got, and it's because the judges at the time see something, and eventually people get on the platform, which is nice. And so the newcomer comes up. You hear your name, talk to us, like, we're like, well, okay, that's cool. Or you're like, blasé. We're like, yeah. Because you're a very cool and collected guy. Yeah. You're very composed, right? Because you've done this for a long time as well. And we'll dial back a little bit. So take us through the moment you hear your first award being called out.
Yeah, so they I mean, it is all a bit of a blur. And I always say this at awards: the winners actually kind of zone out, because they're all just a bit shell shocked. No, sat at the back, heard my name as best newcomer, won that, went down, did an interview, came back. I thought, that was good. Well, this has been a worthwhile evening. This is lovely. And then a few minutes later, it was best TEDx talk, and that was okay. Didn't expect that. And then finally, to top it off, the Speaker of the Year, which is unbelievable. So I didn't expect any of that. Honestly, you have to go in all of these with expectations of 0, and you can't control anything. I have no idea the other entrants. So that was the other thing. I entered not knowing well, how many are entered? What is the level? Where am I? Because it's so blind to everyone else. So it was all just one of those of, well, we just treat it. Anyway, the awards came out and we won. And then the great thing is it gave me credibility. Right? That was the main thing is, for me, it's, the magician guy is doing talks now. Yeah, but I've won 3 awards for it and I've done a TEDx. So, and they're like, oh, okay, maybe we'll take you seriously. So that's what I'd say. It just gets that conversation
That's
going
good.
A bit
so
quicker.
It helped you move out of, because you are no longer the magician guy, right? Or are you still the...
No, well, I still do it and I still do entertainment. And I balance between doing so my keynote is about talking to audiences and human connection. So I'm still talking to audiences and performing, and then I'm doing keynotes.
Brilliant. And so since then, because even offline, I feel that, and you even just said it, it gave you credibility. So do you feel like the conversation has changed and people are taking you differently? Has how people approach you changed since winning these awards?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go back to a swallow doesn't make a summer, right? It's just one thing on the list that keeps going. To some people, it might have been the conversation that gets a bureau to actually have a conversation with you. And then you have to go and have a meeting.
You've got to put in the work, right?
Wow. So it's one of those, or it might just, someone might see it on the bottom of your email signature, so it's one of those where it's part of your toolkit for me, firstly, to get my momentum. And now I've got momentum, then you rely on the things that other speakers rely on, which is people actually seeing you doing a lot of keynotes. And then that is how you grow your
brilliant. And but take us a little bit back, because I remember seeing a post of yours talking about, because you were the magic guy. And also, but you were fairly prolific at one point. You had a TV show. Talk us a little bit, like, prior to the life of a speaker. Talk us a little bit about that, and then, because I know you've had quite a lot of heartache in this journey, right?
Yes and no. I mean, in reality, I mean, I'll just give you the short version. So 2009, I was a recruitment consultant, and I quit my job to follow my passion of being a magician. And I went to be a street performer, so I started street performing, then became a close-up magician and used to work weddings and things like that. And then I decided I want my own TV show. And at the time, it was Dynamo Derren Brown, and I thought, I want to have a go at this. Long story short, I created a YouTube channel. I badgered everybody. I made a load of noise. I mean, there's a whole story and there's a whole, funny enough, a keynote in that. But got people's interest, got meetings, got on ITV, and I ended up having my own TV show called Tricked on ITV2. We did 3 series of that. Did a show on the Discovery Channel, which aired in a bunch of countries, and then you're off and then you're working in the telly world. So that's what I was doing for about 10 years. And that kind of culminated on, I ended up doing, things like Dancing on Ice and things like that. And then that all happened. And then the pandemic came along and just pulled a rug from under me, really. And overnight, probably like a lot of your audience, especially if they're professional speakers, overnight, my audience just disappeared. TV said, we won't speak to you for a year. And then I started to panic, pivoted, started making more and more social media, built the social media platform, built the TikTok, built the Instagram, built all of that, and then got to a couple of million followers. So then we all, post-pandemic, go back into action, entertainment. So that has been a shift then at that point away from traditional telly, because traditional telly showed me how fickle it was and how quickly it can go away. So I was less interested in that. More interested in the control that I have on social media. And then at the same time, I was doing a lot of corporates. I started speaking to some bureaus and people that were booking me for entertainment, going, there's a whole thing of speaking. And I used to watch speakers, and I would talk to people that I was working with, going, I'm really interested in this skill that I have. And then, that's a keynote. And I had to reverse engineer, going, maybe that journey I just described to you over the last 12 years has learnt some lessons that people in everyday lives would be interested in. So then I went, let's tackle it. I asked myself very simply, so I went from I remember about 4 years ago, 0 keynotes, to how do I become a keynote speaker. And I can give you the blueprint if you want of how I did it. Very simply, I went, right, who are the best? Let's study them. What does it look like? So I started trying to pattern spot there. I need a mentor. If I'm going to do anything for the first time, quickest way to get there is find a mentor. Obviously, Maria Franzoni.
Our ambassador, a lovely ambassador, yes.
There you go. I asked around the industry. I asked bureaus, and they went, speak to Maria. And I paid her money to say, give me the blueprint. Here's what's the blueprint. She gave me the blueprint. Got to do the work, follow it. And then she put me into Mary Tilson, who's amazing. And then her job was to then write my speech with me. So then once we had the blueprint and I knew my angle, I then had to do the work. To do the work, my advice here, really simply, was as a stage performer, the advantage I had is I don't mind getting in front of an audience if something's half ready, because I know I've got enough of the skills to get through it. So what I did was I said, right, I'm going to do 10 keynotes for free as quick as possible. Simple as that. Let's not overthink this. Let's not try and get a website. Let's not try and get a brochure. Let's not just do 10 as quick as possible for free. So I phoned all my friends and people I knew and said, can I come into your office? Can you all pull a bunch of chairs around and I'll do you my keynote for free? And I just got 10 of them under my belt within about 6 weeks. So then by the 10th one, I could then start charging 500 quid, 600 quid. And then very quickly, after 20 or 30 of them, now I knew I was match fit. Now I had the project ready to go. So it's very much how a performer thinks is you do weeks and weeks of rehearsal to get before you start selling tickets. And I think maybe there's a lot of speakers listening to this that might be overthinking, I need to do this. Bottom line, have an idea, get booked for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 talks, and then just start refining.
I love that blueprint, and I think there's a talk in that. You've got many talks. There's a talk in the talk.
Well, it's interesting to people in the speaking world that might be getting stuck going, even now I've got new talks that I want to do to my top end clients, but I might just go and run them out for 5 or 10 goes for free, because it's just what you do as a performer. You go and find a place
and let's just unpick that a little bit. What would you say are the key differences between speaking and performing? Now, of course, there's an element of a performer in speaking, but having been a former performer myself, a professional dancer years and years ago, I know that I thought the transition from being on stage, being a performer, would be easier. When I started to break down and understand what actually goes into the skill of speaking, I learned very quickly that I needed to learn again. So how did you find that?
So let's talk about the things that do correlate. Is I stand on, as a magician especially, I stand on stage on my own doing spoken word. So that is a big box tick there that I've got the stagecraft there. But what the difference is, and it's the first kind of thing I asked Maria is, okay, I don't understand this thing called speaking. First question, what do the audiences want? So if I was to do a gig, what's the best thing a booker or the audience could say about the talk? Because if I start there and understand that, and the big difference is, my audiences in general want to be entertained. I don't think as a speaker being entertaining is enough. That's not what they're paying their money for. Yes, you can be entertaining, but the thing that Maria said is you have to give these people, respect their time and give them value and give them something for their time. So that's what we have to understand. So for me, it's even now in my talks, I'm always thinking about, has everybody in the room got something from my talk that they will use and can use quick? Like, it might even be a throwaway 2-minute bit, or it might be the bigger high concept bit. That's the difference. You have to give people something of value.
Absolutely. And I just want to ask you this, because I think you've developed quite an interesting relationship with it. Excuse me. How, to someone listening, let's say even fairly established, tell them about your relationship with Rejection, because you must have had a fair few rejection, right? I don't think anyone can be in this journey without, but you seem very wise, so I'm intrigued to hear about how you would explain your relationship with rejection.
Let's start as a magician. So failing as a magician is built into the process. So the way you learn a magic trick is, even when I was in school as a teenager learning a magic trick, you learn a trick, you go up to a group of people and you go, can I show you this trick? And it probably doesn't work very well. And they go, I saw how you did that. And then you go away and you make an adjustment and you go again. That is the process. So even when I stand on stage, I will stand on stage with a new trick and go, I don't know if this is going to work until we get to the end of this trick. So the idea that the thing might not work is built in, and it's just part of the process, right? So I'm not expecting perfection on day one is the first thing. So in terms of dealing with failure there, and then if we now put that into the career side of it, failure was that's probably what drew me to a job in sales and recruitment. I was cold calling, which was 90% failure and 10% success, not even. So, but everything was an adjustment. So, I'd say when I tried to be on telly, I took a sales approach of making a list of all the managers in London that represent people on TV. I didn't know much about telly, but I tried to understand the blueprint, and the blueprint was everyone on telly has a manager. So let's go and get a manager. Called them all up, and every single one said no, because. Why me? Why me? And I know you talk around similar areas, Elliot, but it was like, well, why me? No one's asking for you. There's no demand for you. This is not a done deal. So I had to adjust, and the adjustment I made was, I had to show them what I could do, not tell them. So I went and made YouTube videos myself. I went and created a TV show on YouTube where I would find celebrities and do tricks to them. And I flew to LA to try and find Britney Spears. No, it didn't. But in that same week I was there, I found Quentin Tarantino, Jamie Foxx, Mickey Rourke, a few others. And it didn't even matter if I failed in the videos, because failing, it's nice to show a magician failing sometimes. So I took all of that and I sent it back to all those managers.
Now will you take me seriously?
Now will you take a meeting? And it got me the meeting. And then from there. So that's how failing is kind of built in. So with this speaking thing, I very much had the approach, and I remember vividly going, I will be a better speaker after my 50th or 100th talk than I am today. Fact. If I do this talk 50 or 100 times, it will be great. I just need to get through the pain of the first 20, 30, 40.
Very interesting.
So,
go on, sorry.
In answer to the failure of that, then, I gave myself places to fail. So I put it in low stakes environments where they're not paying any money.
So then
So if it did fail, it's a safe space.
They're not going to be like, oh my God, give me my money back. That was awful. Oh, and even worse, bad review, right?
Yeah. And I wasn't calling my best client saying, you've got to put me on your big conference, I'm brilliant, when I hadn't done the work. So I wanted to know that I'd done the work, and I tested it and stress tested it in real environments, so that by the time I was ready, then I could shout it out to the whole world.
And what's really interesting hearing you speaking is it's quite interesting, you always look for the blueprint. Wherever you've talked about, you're like, what's the blueprint for that? What's the blueprint? So what you're saying is, and I know this isn't new, but I'm hearing it from success leaves signs. There's a blueprint to succeed. But the other part that is really refreshing to hear you talk about is your willingness to study it first, right? And that's really refreshing, because I interview a lot of people. I work with people, as you know, this coming into 5 year next year with professional speakers. And not a lot of people are willing to figure out the blueprint or be taught the blueprint, go and fail at it first and then rebuild. And I think it's really refreshing to hear you speak like that, and just for you to be so open and honest.
Well, I think the starting point, and we have this in magic and working with people when I'm creating productions or we're creating shows, is it sounds really, I'll go a bit deep here. It's about, you've got to park your ego at the door. It doesn't matter how smart you are in your world and what you've achieved. That's great. I knew it didn't matter that I could come in and go, well, I'm this. It's irrelevant. The bottom line is, park my ego. I don't know how this works. So the first thing I said to Maria, she was like, why do you want to coach? Because I don't know what I'm doing. In this space, I have no idea. And the quicker you are honest with yourself about that, and you say to, and I would say even to people I speak, I go, look, I'd love to get into this thing, but I'll be honest with you, I have no idea where to start. And people would go, oh, start by talking to her. Boom, right. Then I go, but I know this, Maria, but I really don't know any of this. People are so scared often to tell people that they don't know things. Whereas I'm just like, I don't know this. Like even now, like let's say, not this, but let's say my goal was to get to 100 keynotes a year. My question would be like, well, I don't know how to do that exactly. I've got ideas. So who can I speak to maybe tell me the blueprint of how to get to 100? Then after 100, what's next? Then what's next?
Yeah.
Then what's next? You know
I just think I find it really refreshing and your honesty, and because I think also a lot of speakers have this, not the ones I've interviewed by the way, but I know I come across them, have this notion that they feel like everything has to be ready, fixed and in place, and they always have to show up that way. And what I love is this honest conversation we're having about your journey, how you handle things. And I'm quite excited now because I'm going to be working with Maria on her keynote for next summit. So this is going to be interesting for her to be in this seat on the receiving end. But I really love how you're just hungry to learn. And I think that's something that, again, some speakers get to that point, they plateau and they're going to go, well, I've got there now. And they stop. And I think that's when they start to stagnate. Would you agree on that part?
Yes, definitely. So again, let's come from a performer angle here. So the best performers, it's never finished, right? So I'll give you an example. Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller are one of my favorite magicians ever. They've been going 40 odd, 50 years. They perform hundreds of shows a year in their theater in Vegas. They're one of the best of the best. They could just dial it in. They could turn up, go through the motions, not have to think about it, right? Teller himself has said, bear in mind, hundreds of performances. He says it takes him something like 5 years to get good at a trick, and about 12 years until he feels he's mastered a trick. And they're doing this hundreds of times a year. So if they're the best of the best, who the hell am I to think that I've got this done and finished?
Right.
Never. Darren Brown does 200 tour shows, roughly on average, around the UK. They are still making notes and changes on the last night of the show. Which is the way
it should be, right?
Because he's just constantly finished. So, okay, so how do we apply that then as a tip? What I would do is every performance is a chance just to get that little bit better. So in the early days, very simply, get a draft of a speech as quick as possible, run it past someone like Mary or somebody you think has got a grasp of this. They say, yep, go and do that. Go and do it, but set up that camera at the back of the room. And if you are not filming every performance for the first 20, 30 performances, you are missing opportunities to learn quickly. It's as simple as that. So I would take the video, I'd send it to Mary and go, that's me on stage yesterday. Do your worst and come back to me with your notes. And you do that, even if you do that half a dozen times, you'll be amazed at how quickly they'll spot something. They'll go, that section was wrong. That section was this. Things that you might never spot.
Well, it's David Copperfield, isn't it? They used to put his tricks onto his worst. He used to invite all his haters to watch his new tricks. And he used to say, destroy me, give me your worst, right? And that's part of, I think, what made him work well, whether you like him or not. I think what helped him become so world class.
Yes, and even that process, and it's out of the whole process of everything I've just described to you in doing this, putting a talk together is a bit uncomfortable because you've got to get into your writing zone. Standing on stage and delivering it, I don't find that uncomfortable. The bit that makes my insides knot and my chest tighten up is when I'm getting notes back from someone. Because let's dig into that, right? So if I get on a call with Mary and she's like, right, I've got a page of notes on your last speech, it's like someone telling you that your kids are ugly.
Well, not that anyone's told me that, but yeah.
Even if, and it's not them, by the way, they do it with love and it's come from the right place. It goes back to my ego. My ego wants to hear is, that's brilliant. Don't change a thing. You've nailed it. But the reality is they're going to go, look, it was good, but it's a 6 or 7 out of 10. We can get this to a 9 out of 10. And then you feel like, oh God, I've climbed a hill and now I'm slipping back down the slope. It's just a really uncomfortable session, and you'll fight against some of the notes, and you'll fight against, oh, well, I disagree. But you need to, that's your ego fighting. You just need to let your ego go and just sit on those notes and then decide if you want to action or not.
We've got a great saying, so I learned this years ago. So feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. And, you know, champions, of course, would love to, or do love to win, but they understand to win, they have to improve. And if they're going to sustain winning, right, then they have to develop that feedback mentality. We don't have to like it all. We don't have to listen to it all. But when it comes from someone we respect and trust, I feel it helps elevate us, which is, again, what you're saying. None of us like the stuff that didn't work. None of us like the stuff going, well, that didn't land. None of that. We, like you say, we want to hear like, that was brilliant, you're entertaining, oh my God, I'll book you. But actually the growth learns in, that didn't quite work, that could be better. Pause for half a second longer here. All the minute stuff, that's the difference can be, right? Because to go from really bad to good, actually the journey is not that hard. But to go from good to great and world class, I think that's where the inches really matter. That's where the little tweaks start to kick in. What would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's also tiring, right? It's tiring to put your work down on something and then somebody go, there's a load of notes, go again. And then you go again and again and you go, oh, can we just say it's finished now and move on?
That's the ideal, yeah. The worst is unsolicited feedback. When someone goes, oh, I really like what we did. Would you like some feedback? And you go, well, actually, not really, but go on. Yeah.
Yeah. And it depends who it's coming from and etc. But I think that those things in general, though, if you're trying to kickstart, you know, if someone's going, this, you know, it's the start of a year now. If someone's going, this is the year I'm going to do keynotes. Find somebody that's willing to direct you. We'd call it a director in the industry. You might call it just a consultant or a mentor. Get the blueprint and just do those work and just go through those uncomfortable sessions.
Love it. So I'm so happy. I mean, honestly, I feel like you and me can talk for hours. Unpack that brain of yours. So moving a little bit away from kind of the award side, and thank you for being so honest and frank, and even your journey to adding, I should say, speaking into your repertoire as a magician, as an entertainer. So what would be one thing that you're happy to share you wouldn't normally share on these kind of podcasts or interviews? What's that for you? Is there anything?
Look, I'm relatively open. I think. What do I think? It's an interesting one. I'm trying to give you.
It's okay if you don't have anything. Well, that's fine too. I just want to unpick you a little bit.
I think, look, I would, not that I wouldn't share it, because I would. I think what you don't see, if you were to look at all my stuff, my website, and you probably don't see that this gig of being a speaker or being an entertainer, and I think this is why some people can get to the top and some can't. It's 20% doing the gig and it's 80% sales and marketing. And that has been the reason I was able to get a TV show in 2010 was because I had my sales and marketing hat on. The reason I do corporate gigs is like, yes, I love doing the gig and that, but actually, after we're done from this, I've got a list of people that I'm going to DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example, right? I'm trying to launch a podcast right now. It's my 5th episode. I want this so I've set myself a vision for this, which I want it to be the number one podcast about creativity in the world. That's the goal. The way I'm going to do that is through grunt work, sales and marketing, and I'm going to DM people and ask them to listen to it. That's it. So I've literally messaged hundreds of magicians. Hey, you know me, but we've not spoken for a while. Do you want to listen to my podcast? I think it will help. Boom. That's just sales.
Which is how you approached me, right? Not quite like that, but, you know, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly that. And it's really boring. And a lot of people don't have the patience for it. And they quit after a few days. Even the way I'm booking the guests is sales and marketing. I am just DMing people constantly. So I'd say that's probably something that I don't talk about often because it's not that interesting. But that is spend more of your time doing that, and then get the gigs.
Yeah, I always talk about how this industry, like this business, is relational. There's a lot. It's important to build relationships. I've built the whole Speaker Award Speaker business and Speaker Summit on relationships. The way we recruit judges is relationships. That it's such an integral part, and people underestimate how important it is. And showing up as a decent human being and treating people with respect is also important. And don't come from the entitlement space. Like you'll be so lucky to get on my podcast. And I think a lot of people don't talk about the grunt work and the 80%, which is outreach, follow up, which you do very well, which is also what prompted me to share it, but also go, let's get, you're always on my radar because it's the winner series, right? So I couldn't do a winner series without you being on radar, but I think it helped accelerate the process. So I don't know about you. You say you got a young family. I've got a young family. I've got 5 and soon to be 6 and a 9-year-old. I don't know about you, but our kitchen table is a chaos of creativity. No matter how much I tell them to not do stuff at the kitchen table, everything happens at the kitchen table. Even now as we speak, Christmas cards are being decorated. Everything goes on. It's where my wife and I talk about the future. We talk about our visions, where we eat. Obviously, we also eat there. What's on your kitchen table? Just out of interest.
Well, I've got young family, and we're the nicest times around that are when we put all the screens away, and I'm getting really, really, especially this year. Now they're old enough, 8 and 6, getting really into board games, because it's just a chance for me, and I'm guilty of this as everyone is, to get off my screen, to just sit and be present with the 4 of us and playing something that we're all just, like that. For me is like we'll literally just get to sometimes even before school we've got 15 minutes, we play a quick game of this. So genuinely we're finding it as a family and just as a healthy thing to getting off screens and being present is getting more and more into that. So at the moment there's usually a board game or something, and now on the kitchen table.
Your kind of focus is connection, right? When you speak, you talk about that. So tell us a little bit about your take on that. So for us to say, what's your idea worth spreading, right? You've done a TEDx. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I would. And also, by the way, just to build on that last point I just mentioned about trying to stay off screens and things like that. I've got a device, and I'm going to show it you. I know it's an audio format, but I've got this here on the video.
Okay.
I've got this brick device, which I have mentioned it a couple of times on my social. This is a little square, I'm going to say 1.5 by 1.5 block that sits on my table, and if I touch my phone on it now, it will lock all the apps on my phone I do not want to use. The only way possible to use them again is to go return physically back to this device and tap it again. So being present and having times where I'm not doom scrolling is a big thing important. I'm trying to work on. This brick device, it's called Brick, it's about 50 quid. Like I bricked this morning, and I'll look at my time. I bricked this morning because I found myself procrastinating, and you'll see I've been bricked for 3 hours so far, right? Well, I mean, I say well done. I mean, it's just not getting, especially on the days where you feel like you're prone to being procrastinating even more. So anyway, so that is the thing there. And then your question was about the human connection. Yeah. So what's my take on that? It comes from what most magicians get wrong when they get into magic. They think being a magician is about the tricks and how good you are. And that is so not the case. So people think, well, I should be earning money and I should have a career as a magician because I'm amazing and look at all the tricks I can do. But if you can't get people to care about those tricks, and if you can't get them to engage with you and connect with you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are. So that's my starting point. Is I learned that really early on, that and just to change the tricks, you can be the biggest expert in the world at something, but if you can't get your audience to care about your knowledge or build a connection with them or even keep them engaged, then it doesn't matter. So it's just getting people to refocus what they put their focus on when they approach interactions, conversations, audiences, that kind of thing. So that's my starting point, and then I talk about the things I've learned.
So do you feel we're at a connection crisis these days?
Look, I think it's interesting. I think certain skills aren't needed as much anymore, right? So I built my early sales career by being on the phone for 3 hours a day. So I had to use my voice to sustain my career, whereas now we all send emails all day long. So we're not using our voices as much to sway, to connect. We're not using our ears as much to listen. There's things like that I think we are losing, especially. Do I want to put a badge on it and say it's a crisis? I think we all have these moments. People panicked when the internet came out, didn't they? But there are things that I'm seeing as skills. John, here's the thing. I did a gig last week for a family-run business in Leeds, and the owner of the business is about 80-something. He's been in business 60 years, and we did it in the Corn Exchange.
I love Corn
Leeds,
Exchange.
which is this beautiful building. And he used to work in the Corn Exchange. And he said, I used to bring my corn and my stuff to the market, and we would do a deal by talking to each other, looking them in the eye, and shaking hands. And that was the deal done. So that art of negotiation and that art of my word is my bond, my handshake, all of that we've lost, right, over years. So I think there's things like that where it's less important to communicate like we used to. So I do miss that.
Oh yeah, that's why I trained as a dancer at Leeds, Northern School Contemporary Dance. I know the Corn Exchange well. That's a while ago now, over 25 years since I graduated.
What was your best dance, Elliot? What's your
now? I just dance like a dad. But back then, I trained contemporary. I also did breaking and street and hip hop. I toured with the Irish Show for a while in Germany. I mean, I used to love the energy and the power of breaking, but then I used to love the grace and the strength of contemporary. So, I think a bit like many entertainers, I enjoyed the discipline I was most present to and performing at the time. And that's where my energy went in. Because then in the evenings in the clubs, I'd do the breaking and all that. And that was fun because I'd enjoy getting challenged. And that's what I liked about breaking, when you get challenged by another breaker and you have to come up on the spot with different moves and please the crowd. Like the crowd had to go, you were looking for that whoa from the audience, right? Which is why I always used to do head slides and silly things like that, right? Wouldn't do that now, or head spins, and the audience would be like, wow, that's amazing. So you talk about the instant connection when you're breaking or you're doing the street stuff. It's all about like hooking the audience to watch you more, which isn't 1,000 miles away of what you do, right? Or what we do now. But when I did contemporary, I enjoyed the expression, the finding that artist in me and allowing myself to express that side of things. So that was interesting. So where do you think, so you talked about screens and you talked about having a break, and you talked about, I interviewed someone who's part of the Winner Series. She talked about getting 800 hits of dopamine a day now, which is ridiculously crazy. So for you, that someone that speaks about connection, what could we do differently or better? So let's say, because we got a range of listeners on this, we're going to have some
I'll give you one tip and I talk about this. I say you can go on all these courses, you can read all the books, and look, this isn't the only thing, but just a thing, if I was to pick one thing off the list, give somebody your 100% attention. That's it, right? So fundamentally, you can go and learn all these techniques and you can construct these messages and all that. But if you don't give somebody if you just want to connect with someone, give them your 100% attention. The reason I'm mentioning that is because we're doing this over laptop, right? It's a small thing, but just before we started, I turned all my emails off, right? I didn't want any notifications. I didn't want any dings. My phone has got no WhatsApp notifications. So if we were sat at a table, it won't ping up with someone else's message and distract me for 10 seconds. It's those things that you'd be amazed if you to put your phone away and look someone in the eye and just give them your 100% attention, how that connection starts there. And I shouldn't have to say this, but so many of us are trying to multitask all the time. we're trying to be productive and email and do other things whilst talking to other people, that can all wait.
So presence is important, right? I mean, on that note, like, I don't have my phones with me in the evening. I don't take it to bed with me. I leave it downstairs. So all these little bits. And I do think presence is really important, especially with young families. It's very easy to either give them a screen or be distracted by the screen. So I love the board game aspect as well. We've started to do that. My little boy is the first one to go, can you play drums with me? Can we play? He's the first one that wants to play, a board game. Because also I think it's one of the times where he's a part of, he's the smallest one, he's the youngest one. So he's this continuous uphill battle against people that are bigger than him. So I feel board games levels us, right? Which I really love about him, and he's always like, wanting to play games. Plus, he can control it. That's a different conversation, right? Because I feel like he needs to be in control, which again is the younger syndrome, controlling your environment. But presence is so important. So, do you feel then, as speakers, as professional speakers, keynotes, whatever, content speakers, whatever frame we want to give ourselves as a speaker, do you feel speakers lack presence on stage when you see other speakers?
So if you were to talk about the word presence, that's usually some people, your presence when you want to being present, as in you're mentally being present.
Yes,
is what I was talking about. However, how does that work? How does that work when we're speaking? And I've actually sat here. Do you know what? I'm going to give you. So I've just. It's definitely not.
Plug away, please. I don't mind.
One of the guests on my podcast was a guy. So the podcast is called What's the Trick? I interviewed the world's most creative people to understand their creative process. And I interviewed actor Andy Nyman. I'm currently holding up 2 of his books. These books are tiny little pocket books. You can read them in about 20, 30 minutes. And it's called The Golden Rules of Acting and More Golden Rules of Acting. If you genuinely just take anything from this podcast you're listening to now, if you just want to download or buy this, the Golden Rules of Acting and the More Golden Rules of Acting, each page is just a nugget, a soundbite of just but it's not for actors. As speakers, you will get so much out of this, but not just as speakers, as people. And he's one of his main things in there. But you hear actors and performers talk about it. Is why one reason we don't connect when somebody's talking is you don't feel that they're being present. But one of the reasons you don't feel they're being present is doesn't feel like what they're saying is fresh and it's for the first time. So our challenge, if you want to talk about making the audience feel that you're present as a speaker, has to feel like this is the first time you're doing this. That's our challenge. And there are so many speakers that I watch that I feel have rehearsed this word for word in their bedroom, the rhythm, the pauses, the inclination, the question to the audience. And I feel like I'm watching a TED Talk where everyone's got the same cookie cutter voice pattern. Doesn't feel fresh to me. It feels too rehearsed. It doesn't feel like it's the first time you're saying it. So that is our challenge. Once we've mastered it, how do we keep it fresh every time? And that's what a good actor will do when he walks into the theatre. They've learnt their script, but they're making it, recreating it fresh every time.
And I talk a lot about the use of archetypes to create that freshness. Archetypes of speaking, not acting. I know there's various people who talk about archetypes, but I feel that's another kind of tool to your box that allows you to start fresh when you go into what we'd call the fairy archetype, where it's fresh, you're curious, it's exciting, right? The Ellen DeGeneres of the world or the Michael McIntyres, when whatever they deliver with excitement. Whether you like them or not, it's irrelevant, but it feels like they've just told that for the first time. That's a fairy archetype, which we talk about. There's 11 others. Go on.
Yeah, and it's, if you've ever been pitched to in a sales meeting, the worst thing you want is when they're going through the slides and you can tell. So let me just tell you about our new product. So this is a new product. We're really big in Germany. Oh, have you heard of this, Chris? And it's like the 20th, 30th pitch they've done that week. And you just feel like this guy's going through the motions and he's a robot. And even at that level of just those conversations is even when I used to cold call, you want to make it feel like, oh, I've just given you a call, Elliot, because I just had this thought and I wanted to ask you about this. It's my same script, but I'm trying to make it feel to myself that I'm not just going through a script.
Be present, have presence, and make people feel special.
Yeah, yes, and I think it's trying to make if you want speaking advice, needs to feel fresh. In fact, in this book, he's got a page here, and I've highlighted
Go for it.
And I'm going to
I
read
love
it
this
out to you because it's okay. I'm going to read you. This is a page from Andy Nyman's book. It's only a few words. It says, "Acting in a nutshell. Forget everything else. This is all you need to remember." So this is a brilliant actor telling you the only thing you need to remember about acting, right? He says this. 3 things on the page. Pretend it's the first time you're saying it. Pretend it's the first time you're hearing it. And pretend it's the first time you're doing it. That's acting.
Love it.
Do that as speakers. Pretend it's the first time you're saying it. Pretend it's the first time you're doing it. Then the audience will feel that you're present.
I love you bring such a different angle to this podcast to the other ones I've interviewed so far. It's brilliant. So I'm going to take this slightly different direction now, and I just want to, in your opinion, what should we be talking more about that we're not talking enough about? Not as speakers, generally in the world. You can take that as speakers, or you can just take that. What are we not talking about that needs to be discussed more?
Interesting. Look, I mean, I think it is being discussed. I talk about communication and human connection, right? I think the way in which we're building our environments and the way in which young people don't need to communicate, I think is important to me. I think if I'm honest, if I was to really break this down, I think the way in which we're teaching our kids is so fundamentally outdated. But if we got that right, all of the things that I would want to see changed in the workplace would have happened because they get that. And I'll give you one perfect example in my world. As a performer, I was always, as you are, so you went to school, we're different ages, my kids are going to school, pretty much nothing has changed. It's learn this information, put it down on this exam, and we will give you a mark. That's so not how the world works. That's so not building you to go out and be successful in the world. It might have been years and years ago when it was all factory workers and managers and that kind of thing. It's different. What we never get tested on, ever, is your ability to stand up and communicate the information you know. And actually, why don't we change the school system so it's like that? Some sort of system like that. So actually, when we get into the workplace, the idea of getting people to stand up in front of people isn't petrifying because they've worked that muscle for decades. And so I was having this conversation. They said that's why the Americans in general are better speakers than us, because they're kind of used to doing it in school and in occasions a lot more than we're ever. Like, I don't know about you in Europe, you're a performer, but in day-to-day schooling, how often are you standing in front of your class communicating your information? So I think that for me is something we need to. I mean, I could list about a half a dozen other things to change in schooling but to set you up for life, that for me would be one thing. The way in which young people
I agree with you. I think the world they're going to grow into is going to be vastly different by the time they even go to secondary school. But you said, so when you said the way we are raising our children, are you also talking about parenting being updated, or are you just talking about schooling?
I was talking more about school system. You know, we are told that you are good or bad based on your way of putting information on paper, and I think there's so many other ways to help educate and assess.
I agree.
Children.
I agree, and I can see that both with my daughter, who's very academic, and my son, who's very clever, but I'm not sure he's academic. And I think I can see the difference she thrives in the schooling environment. She loves it. She'll do her homework a day earlier. But I can see how much harder it is for my son to take instruction. He's only 5 coming on 6, right? So that's, he's got at least 4 years before he has to sell his first business and make his first million. I'm being lenient here. At least 4 years, But I can see that. And I've always said this. I'm dyslexic. I still am. I've struggled with the schooling system. And what I refuse my children to go through, and you can put your intake, is I refuse for them to be defined by marks. Like, their self-worth cannot be linked to what marks they get. And I'm working very hard, especially my daughter, because she so loves getting good marks. And I mean, I feel that's also what you're alluding to is right now that our kids are their self-esteem is being built up by how well they get marked.
Correct. And also, your daughter's, it's great that she's doing really well in school. It's not necessarily setting her up for the best outcome out there, because actually out there, she might have, I say out there, in the real world, when she's an adult, she might have to learn how to have difficult conversations, how to stand in front of a room, all these other skills that we are just not teaching, we're not giving any importance. Even the ability, and I don't know how you would assess this in school, but a lot of life is about being likable and the ability to get on with other people you work with, and other people want you around them in the workplace, so they bring you on the journey with them. You don't ever get a single lesson in any of that at school. But actually, fundamentally, get that right and communicate and be intelligent. Now you're on.
Yeah, look, and I think also there's the argument that the high markers at school didn't really succeed, right? We don't see too. It always seems to be, maybe it's because of the environment we're in. It always seems to be those who didn't do well in school seem to do well in business or other aspects. Equally, there's plenty of people that didn't do well in school and didn't do well in life. So I don't know if that's a merit there. But so what else would you change, just out of interest? So obviously, we'd get them stand up, teach them communication skills, teach them pitching skills.
I think, what else I think we have this. Well, let's look at what one thing, actually, me and my wife were talking about this, even little things. What are the things that you're going to need in life what is the tools in your toolbox? Yes, you need to know English. Yes, you need to know maths. And yes, you need to know some science. This is all basic stuff. We all need to know our own, properly know our health, right? So to thrive again in life, you need to keep your machine going. So if you break that into 3 areas, you've got your nutrition, your exercise, nutrition, exercise, and maybe sleep. But teach people properly not biology, not the boring way, just here's food you can buy in a supermarket, here's how you can cook it. If you eat this, you're going to keep healthy. We used to have home economics. It doesn't really happen like this anymore. So the fact that someone could come out of school being able to cook a meal for themselves that's not made of sugars and chemicals and all that. That's just you could tell I could go on for
no, good. Okay, so food, mental well-being, and communication. So I think those are pretty good skills for life, and I really like that we're discussing that, because again, I've had such various different topics of interviews. And just as we start to wrap this up, what's your favorite story to end the talk on? What's your kind of your go-to? Do you have one?
Ooh.
Let's talk about your connection context. What's your favorite story to tell there?
Right on the spot. My favorite story to tell you. I'll tell you. Oh gosh, I don't even know if I. I'll tell you, it's not my favourite story to tell, but it's a slightly interesting story to tell. It's about what happened in the pandemic, and when your whole job stops, right? So I get a phone call from my manager going, you're not going to work for 6 months to a year. And we now know that that's true. So I sat there in my house and thought, oh, geez, okay, well, I make my living off being on telly and performing, and I can't do any of that. So I just think it's kind of an interesting story about pivoting and trying to take control when you feel you have no control. So I decided to set up a TikTok account and just start testing stuff. And I took my old TV stuff, put it out online, started getting views. And then I eventually decided to try this thing where I went on eBay and I bought 700 Rubik's Cubes. And this is true. And then I went in my garden, I built a big wooden frame, imagine a 6 foot high picture frame. And I took the Rubik's Cubes one by one and I fiddled with them and then put them in the frame, all 600, 700 of them actually. And it made a mosaic piece of artwork of a celebrity's face. And it would take me days and days. And I filmed all this on a time lapse, filmed it, put it on TikTok, not thinking much of it as just a test. And it went bananas, went viral. This was probably like my 100th odd video. I'd tried all sorts of things. And this particular thing went poof, like that. And I just started doing that over and over again. So for about a year, 2 years, I would make these mosaic pieces of artwork out of Rubik's Cubes, and they'd get hundreds of million views, and that would help pay my mortgage during the pandemic. But anyway, so I quite like sharing that story because it's an example, I suppose, as a performer, that your audience is always changing. So my audience is never standing still, and I've always got to be prepared to try to change with them. If they move to TikTok, I'll move to TikTok. If they move to Oculus or augmented reality, I'll move to augmented reality. And not being scared to test a thing and try it and then adapt it that way. So that's kind of something that was quite significant.
That's really interesting. God, you must be very patient. I don't know I mean, I'm not very visual. So for me to even fathom putting something like that together, my wife's the visual one. All the pictures, all this good stuff in the house is her. So it's really interesting for to sit there with 600 Rubik's Cube and even come up with a canvas. I'm like, wow.
But even with that though, right? First thing I did, said to my wife, I said, look, this is going to be a weird year. We've got some savings, but I don't know how. I said, I think I've got to try this TikTok. I said, so the first thing I did is I said to myself, who is the best coach to get me to where I need to be? And I found a guy on YouTube giving advice about TikTok, DM'd him, and I said, I will pay you to be my coach.
Yep.
Just like I did with Maria. Same thing. This was before that. And we had sessions virtually in the middle of the night because he was in America, and he would tell me what to do, and I'd write all these notes. So I had a blueprint. So whilst I was making this content, I had my blueprint to work off. So it's funny, isn't it, when you look at these times in your life, the same things are just replicated.
It's fascinating, which is why it's been such an amazing and deep and insightful interview with you. So besides entering the Speaker Awards, for everyone watching and things like that, what's your final words of wisdom before we wrap this up? What's the final kind of nugget?
Well, let's pick up on that. I'd say, look, whatever your goal is over the next 12 months, 2 years, whatever you want to really achieve, ask yourself, who is the person that has done it? Could they be my mentor? Can I go and ask a bunch of questions? Because the path's it's already out there. Go and find the blueprint. That's the quickest way.
Ben, thank you very much for your time and your attention and sharing your wisdom. We'll put everything in the show notes. If you want to connect with him, if you want to reach out to him, it will all be in the show notes. If you want to either enter the Speaker Awards or get on the waiting list for when we open it, go to speakerawards.com. This has been the winner series. I've had Ben Hanlin, who was Speaker of the Year 2024 and has gone onwards and upwards. Thank you for your time, my friend. Wishing you, well, right now I'm going to wish you a good holiday season, but you're not going to be listening to this in holiday season. But have a great Christmas period anyway, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Front Row Podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It's through your feedback that we grow. We hope you've taken lots of notes, benefited from the wisdom, and are now going to turn everything into action. Remember to keep an eye out for our next episode of the Front Row Podcast. And remember to like, subscribe, and of course leave us a 5-star review. We look forward to connecting with you and hearing the progress of your journey in the professional speaking world. Tune in next time for the Front Row Podcast.